So, welcome to the Mystics Perception podcast. And in the podcast episodes, we talk about not really spirituality so much, but we talk about the supernatural aspects of spirituality. And the reason why I say it's not, let me just wipe my camera lens, why it's not really spiritual is because it has some very externalized approach to the path as it's unfolding. Now there are some parts that we do put into the podcast. Normally we have guests where they ask questions and stuff, but this is kind of like a solo one. So if you're tuning in, just make sure that you grab some popcorn, leave all your fears behind, because you're about to be introduced to a new type of fear. Maybe you're ready for it, maybe you're not ready for it. We shall find out. But anyway, so let's go into the first thing of how is it not spiritual, right? I've said this many times, and I'll say it again. Spirituality is 100% consciousness. It's 100% soul. It's 100% essence of who you are, right? Which can be felt in your heart region. Now, when we dive into this podcast, we are touching on elements and aspects that not everyone does talk about. There can be supernatural stuff, physically supernatural things, that opens up other different types of dimensions. And it would be nice if there can be some scientific research in these areas, because the supernatural and paranormal is considered as something that's not logical, and it is true, it's not logical, but it's something that can be directly experienced. And when I try to explore the supernatural paranormal phenomenon that happens, and this happens straight after awakening, or it can happen maybe slightly before awakening to your true nature. I've come from a very logical background, and specifically with the spiritual path, very grounded, trying to multiple times test test things out and see for yourself, if that is repeated multiple times, does it result in the same experience, and can we infinitely test this out till the point where we can't even doubt it? And yes, but we need to go into how to make yourself available. This is the first step. If you're not available, if you're not open, if you're not receptive, if you're not ready, then these things can be a very horrible experience, terrifying, and it can drive you to the point of insanity. And I think many times when I try to explore these supernatural dimensions, the mind, the logical mind, cannot help cope, cannot help to accept anything. It will continuously reject it, because it's been programmed that the world works in this way, and because the world works in this way, there is no other aspect or anything that can fit into this world that the mind has created. So it's basically a box. Your mind is like a box, and all we are doing here when we're trying to explore this dimensions is we're trying to see if this is the boundary of the human experience. Can the human experience go beyond the norm? And yes, it can go beyond the norm. So there is, I made a video on the channel some time back about extraterrestrials, ETs, and my encounters with extraterrestrial beings. It started off there. And from a young age, very fascinated. You can go and watch that video. I'm not going to go too much into it on the podcast, but it it opened up like how is this possible? Although there's this guy by the name of Dr. Stephen Greer, he did some research, and he explored the consciousness aspect of meditation and using meditation as a tool for you're using your mind, specifically your mind, as a way to communicate to extraterrestrial beings. And apparently these higher intelligent beings that up till this point no one has like proper photographic evidence and videographic evidence that these so-called intelligent life actually does exist at the time of this recording of this video. I mean, if it did exist, you would think, okay, there would be some proof out there, right? So, even I approach things from a very, very logical perspective, but I had a burning desire one day to find out for myself. And this is the problem with this character that is speaking on this podcast, and the whole reason why this podcast exists. I have this I wouldn't say this desire to know, but something within myself just just gets drawn to all of these things. It's just part of how I am. I like to dig and find out things for myself. I don't like to believe anything. And I think in the past 2 years or so, I've been looking into astrology, right? Not so much the Western astrology, but astrology as a whole, looking into the personality traits, the patterns of the human being, and if the human being is born at a certain time and certain date, and they have certain placements in their birth chart, it's called a natal chart, does that have a certain impact or influence in the character's traits, interests, likes, dislikes? And if that's true, is that traits and the characteristics that's present there, is it true for a larger collective? So can we take this data and can we extrapolate it and gather information and data from all other people of different times that they're born, and different characteristics that they have, and is there some correlation, is there some truth to astrology and all of this stuff, and psychics and things like that. And from what I see, it's not 100%, but it's somewhere around, maybe, I'm just taking a rough guess, maybe 70-ish percent. And the reason how I come up with the 70%, because if you get someone that actually goes and study this, they might not even get anything close to this. There is, if you look at psychics, so psychics are completely intuitive based. There's no logic anywhere with a psychic. It's just pulling out things from freaking thin air and based on spirit telling them certain things and all of that other stuff. So you have to kind of dig in that direction for a long time to filter out the junk There's a lot of it doesn't mean that okay, if you go to every psychic they're going to be accurate. There's specific psychics that are talented and gifted in certain areas. Those ones should be used for research. The problem is, from what I've discovered, you have to find, if you look into psychics, you have to find something called your psychic. And what does your psychic mean? It's just something I made up as a term because there's no other definition I could think of at that time. Your psychic means that someone who you go to can read you like a book, very accurately with absolutely no information. I managed to funnel that down to about 2 individuals that can do it maybe 70-80% very accurate. And they've said certain things, and those things have come true to a great extent in my life. And it can be taking choices with your career, it can be taking choices with life decisions, people that you would meet in the future, and those things do play out. So in the spiritual dimension, there seems to be they speak about something called samskaras and vasanas. So those are all the unconditional patterns that are there within the self structure. So the longer that these unconditional patterns don't it doesn't come to your consciousness, doesn't come to the light of consciousness, which is the awareness itself, then these patterns kind of rule you. So think of it like this. Say you are a computer, and the computer is given a programmed set of instructions, which is referred to as software. And the computer can only function based off the software. What is a software in this case? A software in this case is your conditioning, your patterns, your identity. That is the software. So your intelligence will function only based off the software. Your life only goes in the direction based off the software. You will see things and you will interpret things and you will experience your entire life based off this written set of instructions, which is your software basically. So when you go to a psychic, the actual science behind is they're not really reading into the future or reading into something that is just crazy. If you find the right psychic, they're basically tapping into your conscious patterns, your patterns that make who you are as an individual. So that is how psychics actually work. They are just reading into this software that you as a person has been created. There's a teacher, his name is Yogi Krishna Murti. He says man is just a memory, and if you wipe out your memory, you don't exist. So that ties in very well with the whole entire concept of a computer and all that stuff. But so coming back to the supernatural stuff, what happens when you awaken. So I've had I think I might have mentioned it in the Spotify podcast, so that is available. If you type in Mystics Perception podcast on Spotify, you'll maybe pick up all these episodes where I dived into it. There is one where when psychics talk about spirit. So one thing, I even go into the different methods that you can use to find out for yourself. If there's an intelligence that is there that's functioning, it is conscious, it can respond, but are you willing for it to be conscious and respond? Christianity does a very good job in telling you that these things about psychics and all this stuff is demonic in a way. Now, is it demonic like in that sense of like negativity? Not in that sense there. So How the actual contamination happens is when there's an focus outside of yourself, right, in the external world, which is not really real in its essence, and you experience this when you awaken. Other than that, you'll just experience this life as it being real. And this identity that gets formed when you go to psychics, the ego starts to get built, and the ego is the problem. And in tarot, the card for the ego is the devil card. So it kind of, it kind of makes sense how they looked at it. And now, can something malicious, right, enter? Can you open a portal, basically, right, through exploring these supernatural what's the word, let's just call it the spirit world, right? We'll just put everything in one basket and call it the spirit world. Is there malicious beings that, like how it's written in religion and stuff, do they exist? So I had some experiences that were negative, right? And I've had positive experiences as well, with like archangels and all of that stuff. And they are like certain deities, and if you pray to Jesus and stuff, he does come. So there is, you got to have this kind of connection with these higher, we can call them higher beings, whether it's from Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism. There's always this thing mentioned in those religions about higher entities and lower entities. What actually higher entities and lower entities basically are, it's like beings that been programmed with different intentions, basically. So it's like a scale, basically. So all beings come from one source, which is the creator, and within that frequency range you get a whole lot of beings that exist there. And Earth is, in Hinduism, it's like the middle dimension from the 14 different loks. The loks are like different dimensions, and where we are is like in the middle. So the human being has the potential to be a demonic being, and it has the potential to be a godlike being. It has both qualities, 50-50. So that's where the spectrum does exist. But that spectrum is based on the states of consciousness, not really actual like how it's actually interpreted. It's just states of consciousness. So the more you tune into who you are as beyond the physical body and mind, when you come in contact with that, then you kind of see the whole entire veil. It's just a dream. So it's like, do you want to live do you want to experience your dream as a nightmare, or do you want to experience your dream as a blissful heaven-like state? So heaven and hell is kind of dimensions, and you've seen a lot of people starving and going through poverty for years and years and years, and their experience is hell. And then you get multi-billionaires that have a lot of money, they have penthouses, travel on yachts and things like that, and those beings are living in heaven, but the paradox is, you can have a being that's living on either side, and the opposite experience can be very true for them. So that we also see as well. So that's why I say it's It's not as what you think it is. It's just different states of how you experience life. And the more conscious and awake you become, the more you start to experience these higher realms and higher states. And you can experience samadhi and things like that. It's oneness with God and all of those things like that. So, yeah, so I've had various encounters with beings. And these beings, if you want to call them beings for lack of words, they're like human beings, for instance. So just like how you are listening to this video, just like how I am speaking, they're the same, like that. They're the same. They can do good things, they can do bad things. However, their physical presence can be felt, and they are as physical, but without the physicality which your five senses can perceive. And they can influence your reality. Now, I will explain to you how this happens. And this is something I realized when doing meditation many, many years ago. So I was sitting in the lounge, sitting on the floor, meditating. That time, this is prior to awakening. And my dad kept making a lot of noise in the kitchen, like with the pots. He's washing the pots and he's doing his own thing. And I'm trying to sit there, I'm trying to meditate. And then all of a sudden it just hit me that the source of action is thought. So the source of action is thought. And if you don't see that the thoughts coming in your head is not really you creating the thought. So you're not really consciously creating the thought. The thoughts just come to your head and you act upon them blindly and you just carry on with your life. So the creator is kind of playing this game, and the thought itself is the software, basically. So if you start to see the software, and just observe the software, don't act from it, don't identify yourself with it, then you're free from your karma, you're free from your destiny. That is one level of liberation. And there's an immediate, in that sense, there's immediate forgiveness of every person that's done everything wrong to you. Because you kind of understand, like, oh, you don't blame them. You know, Jesus said, forgive them for what they know. You know, he walked with that kind of wisdom. He knew these, he knew the mechanics of the entire human being, how the whole entire thing functions and works. He was on that level. And Krishna mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita the divine game of Leela. And this is the play of life. You know, you still experience everything, but to live with that awareness all the time. And like I said, and you'll hear maybe some enlightened masters, they say that they don't know what's going to come out of their mouth, neither do they know what's going to come out from the next person's mouth. Like normally when I started this podcast, I don't know where it's going. I don't know, what's the next thing to say. I'm just letting everything flow as it's coming. Now, I'm not saying that I'm enlightened, but this is how the system is functioning for every single person. The difference is, one is aware of this, the other is completely unaware of it. That's the only difference. And the choice is up to you to not lose that awareness. And if you maintain that awareness, you'll go through life with a different kind of grace, because now the creator cannot play around anymore. His game is over with you. The game is up. It's finished. And can you still fall for the tricks? Yes, you can definitely fall for the tricks many times. I fell for the trick, and you still experience everything as it is. But the moment you maintain that level of awareness, you're free. If it stabilizes within yourself, you're free. So it gives you a sense of freedom to play. Now when you have that sense of freedom to play, now you go and explore these things called spirits. You go and explore these things called ghosts. I wouldn't say go explore demons and all those things like that, because if you open up something that you cannot handle. Now what I mean by cannot handle, let's just say something, if you don't have a certain level of mastery of your energy, your body, your mind, even if you do have a mastery of that, you can still fall victim. Because how you fall victim is, you tend to take an identity, or I have mastery over myself, and that is ego. So being aware completely, just simply seeing everything through. So not only seeing everything through, what's in front of you, but being able to see how this one is functioning and operating. That's important. And when I do this YouTube channel, or do any type of content with spirituality, they are angelic beings that are very present. And in the podcast, I go about the different types of experience. I think it's in my life story on the Spotify playlist. I go into the whole thing. I'm not going to go into it here. This is just this video is more of like an introduction to to the non-physical dimension, with some spirituality inside there. And if you don't develop a strong connection with maybe like an ascended master, or God, for instance, or some higher power that it can assist you, right? That is not malicious in its intent. It's known throughout history to be good, so-called good, right? And if you have access to that, well, you can bank on it that if you need help, whoever those beings, it will come. Then yeah, it will come. Now in Hinduism, because I was brought up in a Hindu family, you can see there photos of Krishna and all these things like that. They're still in my house. So like I can live without all of these stuff. This is just not my doing. That's up on the wall there. But anyway, when you sit and you meditate, so these beings, these good beings like gods and stuff, right? If you sit and you meditate and you do maybe a certain form of chanting or very intense level, they say it takes lifetimes for these higher conscious beings to respond. It may be true, but it also may not be true. But maybe it's true, because based on my life, how I look at from my birth, which was like a supernatural event. It started the whole life of mine started off with a very supernatural flow. And it started off with supernatural flow, And then it was normal, and then it went back to supernatural, and then now we're here. So I've always had this connection with these higher entities, where if I sit and I need them to come and assist me with certain things in life, or help me sort out certain things, or just connect with that essence, they respond. They respond. And although I doubted all of these things, they even from birth to, so there's certain things called in Hinduism, they go into this they go into this thing called past lives, and your spiritual progress gets continued, and reincarnation, when after awakening, I look at it and it's like it's all bullshit. The reason why reincarnation is bullshit is because who you are in this lifetime that's born will die here. It doesn't go anywhere. When you awaken, it becomes very obvious that you die here. When you die, there's no you going anywhere, no God, no consciousness, no soul and stuff. So the you that you experience yourself doesn't exist, basically. It's a self-created virtual reality image of a dream that is all part of the dream. So the dream dies when you wake up, basically. So you are part of the dream. You can't separate yourself from the dream. And no one has ever awakened. No one has ever become or reached enlightenment, basically. That's how it is. So yeah, but according to that story of reincarnation of Hinduism and all that stuff, it seems to be kind of true. It seems to be kind of true, but anyone who works on the spiritual path, anyone who's dedicated, who necessarily has the intention that I want to move from this state to the other state, internally, the inner dimension, the access to that will not be denied. Specifically, if you are following this content that's on here, it's definitely you are in alignment with that frequency. So it's not that I am doing this for the first time. You've probably been around listening to these things in previous lifetimes and all of that stuff. It ties in with that reincarnation stuff. So yeah, so we basically meet. So I'm just going into this kind of story. It makes, like, if I look back at it, look at other people, I'll be like, okay, maybe there's something here about it. I didn't go too deep into it, but like I said, the podcast is very externalized. It's not this episode is not spiritual. So yeah, you most likely would have been a reincarnation that would have been around in a past life, and we all meet the same people in different bodies. It's the same stuff that gets recycled again and again and again and again and again until the consciousness within you awakens, and then it ends. But it ends because you realize who you are will die here. It will never be born again. We can't be born again. It's impossible. And that's true for every single person. The only difference is you've realized it. So yeah, so the maximum time for this podcast episode is coming to an end. Like I said in every podcast, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us on the Facebook page. You can feel free to reach out on the YouTube comments section. You have any questions, you can pop those questions in. Not like any of the questions are actually relevant or they are important to answer. It's just that when you walk on the spiritual path, questions help. They help to some extent. Eventually you burn out all the questions, and then awakening happens. So that's the only reason why we have the Q&A part there, just so that it helps you maybe burn a certain question within yourself. But at the end of it, only you can give yourself that answer. You can either accept or reject, but you yourself have to find out that answer for yourself, and only you can liberate yourself from it. There's no other way. The only way is through yourself. And we'll end off with this quote from Jesus, saying that he is the way, and he implying that he is the way is also true for yourself. You are the way. Yeah. So thank you for listening, and we'll catch you guys on the next podcast episode. Namaste.